So first of all, say welcome.
Sorry.
There we go. So let me get started by saying welcome everyone to School of Photography, and I thank you, Renee, for doing this presentation with us to help those who are looking to uh, begin the career in photography. Being an entrepreneur is extremely difficult and it can be challenging at times. So your help to help others get started is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much, Renee, and please take it away.
Thank you. Okay. So my name is Renée Gendron. I am the Eastern Ontario coordinator for PARO, and PARO is Latin for I am ready. The headquarters is in Thunder Bay, but we are a pan-Ontarian organization whose mandate is to support women entrepreneurs. Today, I'll be talking about how to launch your career as a photographer. Now, I will also present PARO services at the end, but it'll also present some services that are applicable for women and men and some supports available to all photographers in Ontario. So bear with me, not everything will be geared towards women. All right. A little bit about how do you have your career avenues. Sometimes you can find a career as a full-time photographer working for someone else. Most of the work as a photographer will actually be as a freelancer. You will be small business owners, whether you want to be or not. It's just the nature of the service and the sector that you're in. And the thing with whenever you're starting a business, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you still need to diversify your skills. You might excel as a photographer, and that's fantastic. And you might get a lot of referrals because you do such great work. But in order to maintain the flow of referrals, you need to run and manage that business. That means your books need to be in order. You need to pay your taxes on time. You need to pay if you have any administrative like fees for professional associations or for access to networks. You need to keep those bills current. You need to have good sales skills, sales presentations to be able to have it. And one of the things that many entrepreneurs don't recognize what they need when they start off on their journeys is that they need courage. Right? It takes a lot of courage to go out there as an entrepreneur and to find contracts and to network and to ask help when you need help and to understand and identify the shifts in the market so you can stay on top of them or ahead of them. These are just some of the skills that you need as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer. And these are some of the things that PARO, for example, could help you with. We can help you understand your target market. We can understand how you reach those demographics. We can help you understand basically how do you package your services in a way that's appealing to the clients you're seeking. You can be a photographer and you are a photographer, that's great, but there are a lot of different types of people and types of companies that need photography as a service, and they need it for different reasons. They want to have a different experience. They want to have a different overall uh, connection to what they're doing. We help, for example, clients develop their social media brand, help them understand what's the difference between Instagram and Facebook, and how do you interact on those different social media platforms in order to develop your brand, in order to get gigs, in order to basically develop and grow your business. And never forget that basically a fundamental thing about entrepreneurship is experimentation. What worked 5 years ago and what worked 10 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. I've got several clients here at PARO that they've been in business for 20 years. Pandemic aside, the simple need of changing markets and of different technologies, it required them to really do some deep thinking about where their future clients will be. They've been working with certain individuals for 20 years. Those individuals are now nearing retirement, and they need to figure out how do they carry their business forward. And experimentation into different niche markets, experimentation into how you deliver your products and where you go to meet your new clients is interesting. So I just get a little bit of echo. So if I'd appreciate it if everybody could just be on mute. Thank you. And so you get creative, you're all photographers, you're part of the creative industries, and always be at the listen for new opportunities. And I say this as stating the obvious, but often we get stuck in our routine. We have certain sources that always give us referrals, or we get contracts for them, and it works and it works and it works, but then we forget to pay attention to what's happening around us. And when we don't pay attention to what's happening around us, we actually lose out on a lot of opportunities to have new partnerships, or to go after different markets, or to adopt new technology, or to experiment with, different social media platforms or what have you. Okay. PARO as a whole offers support in all of these sort of steps in your entrepreneurship journey. But we're here to network, right? We're here to be a good networker, to understand how we can meet people, how we can be supportive, how we can develop a clientele base that will be loyal to us for many years, and not only buy from us repeatedly, but also refer clients to us, because it's so much easier to sell to clients that you already have than to continuously prospect for new clients. And you need to maintain very good relations. Some basic techniques of how to be a good networker is simply to be maintain a positive attitude. It sounds a little bit strange to have to mention that right off the bat, but many networking events, be they virtual or be they in person, a lot of people are shy and they'll stay in the corner, or they'll kind of sort of hang around the people they know, but not get to put themselves out there to meet new people. I do a lot of networking. I have over 15 years of business experience in different capacities. And one of my pet peeves at networking events, particularly if I'm paying, a fair amount of money, $50, $60, $70 to be at that event, I've got people who go around and just basically shove their business cards in my face, and they go from person to person to person, and they shove business cards, and then they expect me to know them, to follow up with them, and to give them referrals, or to buy from them. Don't do that. It's very annoying. Get to know the person first before you ask or even offer your business card. People sense when you're nervous, and it's okay to be nervous, but you have to try with best effort, right? They'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but you have to believe in yourself and believe in your skills to go to these networking events in order to present yourself and meet new people. Always be polite, smile, because smiles, kind of break down barriers, and they put people who might be a little bit nervous or tentative at ease, and it makes you friendly and welcoming. And I know everybody in that room wants to sell something. I know everybody is running their business and they have a service to sell, or a product, or they're looking to get something. But a good networker listens more than what they talk. And they listen more because they're genuinely curious about establishing a relationship with the other person. It's not necessarily going to be best friends. You're not necessarily going to be inviting that person over for Christmas dinner. But the more you listen, the more you're able to know how you can help the other person. And if you're in a position to help the other person, you're increasing the likelihood that that person will reciprocate, either in kind help, or perhaps a referral to a client, or sometimes people surprise us and they give us the exact thing that we needed, whether or not we knew we needed it, right? Because they listened to us as well. You can ask questions about the person, you can ask them about their services or products, but don't forget, a person at the networking event is more than the product or service they sell. They have hobbies, they have families, they have access to different neighborhoods, or they have different experiences, they travel, they speak different languages. They're a human being. And be curious about the human being without being creepy, right? But just kind of get to know them a little bit more. And that breaks down walls between people to have better conversations. And the better conversation you can have with someone, the more likely they're going to strike up a conversation with you, take your business card, follow up with you on LinkedIn or other social media, and be curious about you. It's a hard thing to do, but the more you can remember somebody's name and use their name naturally in a conversation, the more at ease they will be with you. It shows that you're listening because you remember their name, and it shows that you at some level do genuinely want to continue that conversation. Good networkers always seek ways to help, and help comes in many shapes and sizes. And I'll go into what you can help other people with in a couple of other slides, but you can help by connecting them with people in that room. You can help sometimes by letting them vent. You can help by saying, I had a similar situation to what you're experiencing 5-10 years ago. This is how I solved it. Maybe you can learn something from that and apply it to your situation. Networking is also about relationships. And if you can't remember the person's name, it's very difficult to establish a relationship with them, right? And if you're not willing to listen to the other person and understand their perspective and understand their current challenges in their business, then it's very difficult to continue that relationship because there's no reciprocity. And one thing that I find is that once people find the 10 to 15 people they really click with professionally, they tend to keep to that group. The problem with that is that group works and gives you referrals and gives you enough contracts until it doesn't. People retire, people leave the industry, people move away and are no longer in the same position that they were to be able to help you professionally that they once were. Yes, it's great to have that, 10, 15, 20 core group of people that are supporting you in your business and you help them. That's great. But always look to see if you can find more people. And the more people you have that are active in your network that are willing to support and reciprocate, the more successful you'll be as a photographer or generally in life. And things change, right? Robust networks change and adapt over time. Sometimes a new technology breaks through and you need to have access to that skill set. Other times there's a new trend and you want to be able to collaborate with a different kind of artist or a different kind of professional. And to be aware of those trends also means that not everybody is going to be in a position to capitalize on those trends, which means you then need to expand your network to better reflect the interests that you have at that time. Okay. How to be a great networker, right? So now you're listening, you want to establish reciprocity, you're being curious, you're showing interest in them as a human being, not just as a source of referral. You need to have a clear ask. Right? So the person who's just shoving business cards down people's faces doesn't really have a clear ask other than, take my card away from my face so I can be left alone. A clear ask means that you understand your audience. A clear ask means that you respect your audience enough to know the trust levels and whether or not they're able to possibly deliver on that, what you're asking, right? If you're at a networking event with people you barely know and you're just wanting to establish relationships, it's very odd for you to be asking for a $20,000 photo shoot session, right? You don't want to be doing those kind of cold pitches because you don't know them enough to know what they're looking for. You don't know them enough to know how they buy, or what's the process for that company or that person for them to buy. And it also shows that you're not necessarily targeting the right person there. If you're at a networking event where it's like a bridal show, where it's all sorts of wedding event stuff, well, who are you going to ask for example? Are you going to look to try to create connections with event planners? Are you looking to create connections with people who make cakes and then who need to have those cakes photographed to put on their social media? Who are you talking to or speaking with, is the polite way to put it? Who are you speaking with? What is within their scope and their purview in terms of power, in terms of purchasing, in terms of access, and how do you align with their interests? And how can you make sure that you position yourself that your ask actually aligns with what they need? And that shows that you're paying attention and you got your little antennae up, that you're reading the room, right? Know your audience and shift what you're asking for. If you are at a corporate event and you're taking pictures of a corporate retreat, you will be more likely to get business if you ask for to do corporate headshots than if you're trying to pitch an art show that has nothing to do with a corporate retreat, right? Tailor your ask, know your audience. Develop a strong brand. And a brand is much more than the images you take and those that you post online. It's more than your portfolio. Your brand is the collective experience of a customer in, sorry, there's people trying to get in interacting with you. What's it like to contact you for a quote? What's it like for a follow-up with you? How do you plan your events or your weddings, in terms of photography, in terms of what you're doing? What's that interaction with the client? Are you more loosey, touchy, feely? Everybody talks over teas on a sort of like fuzzy rug, or are you a little bit more corporate and you show up in a suit and you have a briefcase? Like, what's the impression that you leave your client, and what's the nature of the interaction that you have with the client? That's your brand. Okay? And how do you develop your brand, and how do you maintain your brand, and how do you stay true to the brand to make sure that you as an individual can always be your authentic self when presenting your company? There is nothing worse than trying to be something or someone you're not in order to go after a niche market. You might get a couple of contracts, but eventually people pick up on that incongruity, on that schism, on that difference between who you really are as a person and who you're trying to be, and then you'll lose business. It's difficult to do that over the long term, personally, emotionally, psychologically. So try to be as internally consistent as possible. Be consistent in your word and action. Be clear and straightforward with the contracts and verbiage that you use. Sometimes people will go to lawyers to have complicated contracts. Unless you're dealing with a very complicated corporate world where there's all sorts of layers of things that they need to take into account for privacy issues or whatever, keep the contracts clear and plain language. And that way, when you're dealing with a customer who wants to photograph grandma and grandpa's 60th wedding anniversary, it's clear to them. Under promise and over deliver. That's in terms of brand, but also in terms of customer experience and in customer service. And that way you can really excel on all aspects of business, not the actual service that you're offering in terms of photography, but also the excel in terms of the total package of being in business. And that can be how quickly you respond to phone calls or to emails. That can be how quickly you invoice and what your invoices look like. Are they professional? And that can also mean all sorts of little follow-ups and clarifications. What questions do you ask? How long does it take for you to get back to customers? That's running the business, right? The service is photography. The service is doing the photoshopping and whatnot. But the business is all customer contacts, and contacts with the Canada Revenue Agency, contacts with other businesses as you do larger projects, and you might need to collaborate with other service providers to execute something. Keep your presence up to date. If you have a social media account, be it LinkedIn, be it Instagram, be it one of the million other platforms out there, if you have one, that's okay, but keep it up to date. If you have 10, that's okay too, but make sure that you can update unique content that's targeted for each audience on each platform on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're going to lose those audiences, and you're going to frustrate customers who originally contacted you with or through Instagram or through Pinterest, whatever it is. And you just lose that customer contact and that trust that you've built up, and ultimately that hurts your brand. And when we show up somewhere, show up fully. If you're not in the headspace to network that night, don't go. If you are not in the headspace to maintain 5, 10, however many platforms, don't maintain 20 platforms. Do 1 or 2 that really resonate with you. And what you do is you develop superb content for those platforms. So show up consistently. And it sounds strange, like, what does this have to do with networking? It has to do with presence. It has to do with attentiveness. It has to do with how much you invest in a relationship with someone else. Some of this stuff is going to be face-to-face. Other times when you're building something online, like LinkedIn, you might know the people, you might be a second or third connection, and they might be in the same city or not. When you're doing something online, like a Facebook or Instagram, you show up consistently because you're developing the opportunity to grow your audience, and you have no idea where your referrals and opportunities are going to be coming from. If you are not consistent with your audience, if you are not consistent in that particular community, you lose the opportunity to develop relationships. Again, relationships does not mean that you're inviting them over for Christmas dinner. Relationships doesn't mean that you're going to be going over to their birthday party. Relationship means that there's a reciprocity and there's a generosity of spirit to mutually help one another reach individual or mutual goals. And you need to be there, right? You need to show that you care enough to show up. Where do you find work online? And I'm going to give you a couple of job boards, included but not limited to. Okay, these are just some of the job boards that are that I'm aware of as of November 4th at 21 minutes. And you're a freelancer. You will get some work as a photographer through referrals, and that's great. You can network, and you can also have a lot of internet publicity, as it were, to drive traffic to your website or to your social media accounts, depending how many you have, to show your portfolio. And if you advertise a lot, I'm absolutely guaranteeing you that you will get some cold hits for customers, because they'll see your work, they'll love it, and they'll want to reach out and hire you. That's great. A lot of other times, for you to be able to get momentum to do that, to have the money to invest in a top-notch website, or to have the money to invest in advertising, to pay for the networking events that you're going to have to bid on contracts. And some of these contracts are very small, some of these contracts are very large. Upwork is one platform that you can look into. It is extremely competitive as a platform. In order for you to be considered by the algorithm, for you to be considered a job seeker, you need an extremely full portfolio that somewhere, somehow, that website vets in terms of quality, in terms of references, in terms of projects that align with buyers on that platform. Don't be discouraged if it takes some time for you to build up your portfolio to be qualified for that website, but keep an eye on it. And there's different niches. If you understand the algorithm and how they categorize categories, pardon the redundancy, categorize categories, but some of it's going to be like photography for corporate, photography for photo shoots for magazines, some of it's going to be photography for weddings, et cetera, et cetera. Look at how they subdivide it, and be very strategic as to how you present yourself on that website. There might be some niches that are underrepresented that you might be able to fill. Fiverr is another gig one, right? Where you put up your prices, you have different packages, and people will solicit you for work. Freelancer.com, FlexJobs. FlexJobs are all telework jobs. And I put this here because there might be some visual graphics or photo touch-ups, or some sort of art restoration things that might complement photographic skills. It's a lot of office work, but since the pandemic, there's been a spreading out of the different kinds of jobs that are willing to be done by telework. And also, don't discount the fact that as you build your photographic portfolio, you might also need a permanent part-time job outside of photography to make sure that you have stable income to pay the rent. And 20 hours a week guaranteed income, and you build your photography business. LinkedIn, there's a bunch of groups on LinkedIn for basically everything you can think of as to professions. Pardon me, I talk too much. LinkedIn can be done for a couple of strategies, depending what you want to do, in order to present your portfolio and your projects, and you have the option in your profile to kind of put your projects up. It's an opportunity to network with other photographers in different sectors, perhaps photographers that have more experience, or more experience in another field, that in an area that you would like to develop your business in. It's also an opportunity to have conversations, right? You can post information on photography and just solicit feedback and see how art is evolving in different professions, and how user interfaces, for example, and the IT development side of things is perhaps in a way incorporating visual arts, and how that impacts other careers that and jobs and ways that you might not be thinking of, but other people might approach you for a job in that, right? Like for a gig in that. Indeed.ca is another job board, Kijiji, Craigslist, Glassdoor. Again, if you're meeting people through these online platforms, I strongly exercise that you use sound judgment. Only meet with them in a public place with a lot of other people around. Make sure that they're somehow vetted before you go to a private event. Like, is this a company? Okay, that's not too bad. If it's a private person event at their house, exercise your caution, exercise your judgment, and see what you can do to protect yourselves. This is an honest offer for work. I was chatting with somebody. I'm the Eastern Ontario coordinator, which means I chat with basically a lot of people. This is a legitimate job. Anybody who is interested, the client is Sandra Lefebvre. She's in she is in Toronto, not the GTA, but Toronto. She has a budget of $200 for anybody interested in photographing, taking photos of her food products for social media. Okay, you have 15 seconds to take that down. Okay, and again, this is November 4th, 2000, and so the gig will be done if you're watching the recording. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right. To bid on the work, either submitting directly through LinkedIn or to any of the job boards that I've mentioned, you'll have your standard portfolio. And you need to tailor your portfolio to the sector that you want, right? If you're bidding on a wedding, for example, well, then only show wedding photographs or things that are related to a wedding. If you're doing corporate headshots, then only look, put together your corporate headshots, et cetera, right? It has to be appropriate. If it's a little broader and they're asking like experimental, or if they're asking for, we want to do this, but give us an idea of your range. Well, okay, like put other things that you've done in there. But most clients, unless otherwise stated, just want to see the work that you've done in that particular field. Your resume, some clients, depending on what you're doing, might want to see your resume in addition to your portfolio. It depends on who and why, but just have that ready. References for the particular industry that you work, or the sector that you work, right? Corporate headshots, they want references of corporate headshots. If it's a wedding, other weddings that you've done. Sometimes you need to pitch a concept of how you would accomplish the job. And what does that look like? Well, I'm going to show up, check the lighting, and take some photos and develop the photos. Right? Be more specific. How do you coordinate with other people on the job? What's your budget? What are your deliverables? What is your accountability? What are your check-ins with the customer? Is a check-in a 5-minute phone call, kind of, sort of, or is it a full sit down, half an hour thing, depending on what you want to achieve? And then you need time to put the proposal together. You might be working a permanent part-time job to make sure you can pay the mortgage or the rent. And then you're doing photography gigs on the side. And you also need to allocate time to scroll through Upwork or to scroll through LinkedIn and see these RFPs, see these requests for proposals, and actually answer to them. So you need to allocate, you need to budget your time every week as you're building your business and as your business is maintained, right? Once you're rolling and you've got 5-10 customers, you can't forget to keep prospecting. If you're not looking to the next client and the 4th client after that and the 10th client after that, you're not going to have a business. So it's time management as well as skills management, and it's I will come back to questions after Mustafa. All right. So what we do have in terms of time management is, okay, you can allocate the time you need to actually do your work, and then the time that you need to run the business to make sure your taxes are filed, your billing is accurate, and all that fun stuff, and that you're networking and updating your social media posts. That's running the business, right? So those are some things that you need to consider. And this, I think, is the kicker. And this is the thing that most people don't, and photographers aside, doesn't matter. Anybody submitting for a request for proposal, follow the steps that the customer wants you to follow for the submission, right? If they want you to go through their website and you go through their form and you put your name and you upload your content and you put your, right, go through the website. Don't email your contact, right? That's, unless your contact says, send it to me and I'll make sure it gets delivered. Don't, right? Don't send it to the random person in HR. Follow the steps that they want you to take in order to respect and show that you can read. If they're only asking for a portfolio of up to 10 photos and your email, don't send them your resume. right? It shows that you're not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, it's hard to build and maintain trust, right? It comes back to listening. And in this particular case, listening is reading, right? Follow the proper steps. So that's my rant. That's my rant for the night. And then if you're doing a lot of these things, particularly like for the gigs on the gig boards that I've showed you, come up with a very simple spreadsheet and simply put in the date, the board, like LinkedIn or Fiverr or Upwork, wherever it is you found it, what you submitted. If you have the client's name, keep track of the client's name and when the person said that they would get back to you if you've won, right? Is it a month delay for them to review? Is it a 6-month thing that they have to cobble together? Whatever it is, pay attention to that. Sometimes you can follow up if they have an actual person to kind of touch base with. Do that only for larger contracts. If it's a $50 contract for whatever, don't, right? You just didn't get the job. But keep track of where you're getting success, at least for inquiries, at least for more information. If for whatever reason you're not getting traction on Fiverr, but you're getting a lot of traction on Glassdoor, don't spend your time in Fiverr then, right? Put more effort into getting RFPs or contacts or contracts in Glassdoor. So where do you get your traction, why? And if you keep track of that, you'll be able to build your connections in your network. Okay. Okay, so this is one example for photographers, but this applies to basically all services. And you have your core skill set of photography, right? You take brilliant courses with Peter. You are extremely talented. You're passionate about what you want to do. And photography, as many other things, have different niches, right? You might specialize in weddings and corporate headshots, or you might specialize in freelancing for magazines and landscapes, right? Okay, great. But there's other things that you can do with those skills to do the ebb and flow of seasons and the ebb and flow of markets. You take whatever types of photos or clients and photos that you want to have, but you might also put together a photography show once a year to sell your independent work. You might put together a photo book and be able to generate revenue from that. Some examples include that you can collaborate with other photographers to put on an exhibit, and you might be able to apply for grants because you're putting on an exhibit and having that. Sorry, I just have to mute a couple people. And having that grant allows you to, 2, 3, 4 months worth of revenue because you put on that show, right? So it's just different sources of revenue or funding, but you're still working in photography. You're just doing different things, right? Your photography book, you could be teaching photography. You could be doing summer camps for children. You could also be doing what? And I'm going to do a quick check-in if anybody has any ideas of what else you could be doing with photography skills that you could develop different revenue streams. And I'm just going to take 1 minute, and you can either unmute yourself and let me know, or you can just type in the chat. Is everybody kind of half watching the Leafs game? Right. All right. So yeah, you could. Yeah, that's right. You could sell stock photos. Absolutely. You could do those. Any other ideas to different revenue generation through photography skills? Selling prints. Yeah, absolutely. You can do calendars. Calendars sell well. Well done, Joseph and Mustafa and Braden. Thank you. Some things, depending on what you want, just to kind of put out more ideas for you to think about. Websites and running ads. Absolutely, Todd. Thank you. For example, art therapy. There are many different art therapies, in NGOs, nonprofit organizations, and photography is an art. And depending what you're doing, that could be a program, for example, right? As a method of healing trauma or dealing with addiction or whatever life circumstances have people down, right? So there's a bunch of other things that you can tap into if you sit down and think about it, or if you just actually listen to how other people view arts, or who view you know the things that you do, and ideas come from all over the place. But yeah, those are some brilliant suggestions as well. So you're still doing your core skill set of photography, you're just doing it in a different way. And again, nothing is set in stone, so you can, as your business evolves and as your interests change, you can have a couple of things going at the same time, right? Different skills and services require different networks, right? We are here to deal with how do you build your business, how do you develop your revenue streams, and different networks. So let's say you're dealing with a photography summer camp, that you're dealing with children who are 10 to 16 years old. The kinds of people you need to interact with are likely different than those who you need to sell a photo book to. Oh, you can do very well a photo book of, with the photographs of the children from 10 to 16, right? Like that's a combined project, but they can also be two separate projects. And how you interact and find parents willing to pay is going to be different than trying to get a bookstore or another art related venue to carry your photo book, right? Or a tourism board to buy your photo book of Eastern Ontario or the GTA, whatever, right? So those are different people to have different asks. Remember the importance of tailoring your ask to different markets, right? To different collections of people, different networks. And that's just one example of knowing who you're speaking with and why. And you also want to understand where you're going to research different market segments. If your idea is a summer camp for photography for children 10 to 16 years old, how you approach that for individuals who can pay I don't know what it costs. I really have no idea. But let's say it's a summer camp that costs $1,500 for a month. Okay. Approaching parents who can pay for that out of pocket is a different sales mechanism, is a different network than approaching the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA to co-host your program and apply for funding, right? You're speaking with two different audiences, even though the ultimate product is, the summer camp. It's the same. You still have the same cohorts. You still have the same techniques that you're teaching week 1 to week 2, et cetera, et cetera. But you're speaking with different people to sell it, and just to be mindful of that. And being aware of what's going around you also means that when you're dealing with a social media platform, the audience on Twitter versus the audience on Instagram, to know their nuance in hashtags and their nuance in what their expectations are in terms of reciprocity and frequency and information that they would find useful. Okay. 4 pillars for any successful business are to actually have a product and service to sell. Okay, that's you need that for a business. I am just going to do that. Thank you. All right. The capacity to create the product, right? It's great to have an idea, but you need to deliver, and you need to deliver well and consistently. You need connectivity, because at the very least, you need to have a relationship with a customer. Otherwise, you don't have a business. It sounds simple, but you have to put that sometimes in explicit terms for people to get their heads around it. Contact with the market, contact with customers, contact with industry, contact with potential customers, contact with peers, to be able to learn from them, share with them, develop a community of practice. And resources, which are financial, barter, materials, social capital, the ability to pull on resources and people to execute a project, whatever that project might be. All right. Bear with me, gentlemen. I promise you there are resources for you as well at the end of this, but I have to speak about PARO. PARO is a nonprofit organization funded by funded by the province of Ontario and the federal government of Canada. All of our services are free, free for women. We serve women from basically the Manitoba border by Kenora, all the way up to Moose Jaw and Moose Factory by James Bay, the Quebec border, Sarnia, Windsor, St. Catharines, right? So Ontario, we have customers and clients throughout, and our services are available throughout. And one of the major reasons why women don't go into entrepreneurship, photography or not, is that they cite that they don't have the money or the capital to launch. And PARO rose to this occasion 30 years ago in order to help women gain access to resources to launch whichever business they saw fit. And we support businesses through online training. We actually have a business 101 course that's available 24/7. Learn at your own pace. You have 6 months. Well, a woman has 6 months to complete it. And it's everything on how to set your pricing, where to physically set up shop, where to find customers, how to develop your niche, how to handle taxation and regulation. If you know any women entrepreneurs or business owners who would like this course, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll chat more about it. We have mentoring opportunities for mentors and mentees. We are, in fact, the largest peer-to-peer lender in North America, right? About helping women access capital to launch their business and grow their business. So we're the largest, really. We have one-on-one business coaching where we help people. We also have networking opportunities, monthly events through our calendar, Wednesday webinars in English, and the French webinars are at least the first Thursday of the month. And as other webinars come online, I plug them throughout the month. And we help women entrepreneurs and business owners find grants and other sources of funding. Couple of, just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of the businesses that we deal with, we have women approach us where they kind of sort of want a business idea and they're not sure how to refine it. We help them with that. We help women who are established in their careers and they're doing like freelance or they're doing contracting, and we help them grow. And we also have tranches of services to support businesses that are 100,000 in revenue, and we grow them up to $1 million in revenue. Nos services sont disponibles en français. They're available in English. We have linguistic capabilities for Arabic, Spanish, Russian, and Portuguese, and Dutch Afrikaans. And we also have, I lost my train of thought. It will come back, but there you go. And we also have Aboriginal focused learning that are led by an Aboriginal elder. We have support for women in all shapes and sizes. And because we deal with women, we are also very much plugged into housing insecurity, domestic abuse, domestic violence, economic violence. If you are a woman and or you know a woman who is facing these issues and doesn't know where to go to help, please direct them to me. We have community support partners throughout Ontario to address these issues. So this is just quickly about the peer lending circles, because we are the largest peer-to-peer lender. One circle is 4 to 7 women, and the stage 1 funding is $500 grant, $500 loan. Stage 2 is $1,000 grant, $1,000 loan. Stage 3, $3,000, $5,000, if they so choose. And the idea is basically an accountability circle, 4 to 7 women. They meet at least once a month. If a woman needs capital, and she presents a valid business idea to the group decides whether or not she's ready, financially, mentally ready to receive that money. And then the group approves, the lending partner issues the loan, and there's a fixed repayment schedule for that loan. If she needs more money, she can apply for stage 2, stage 3. It is particularly beneficial for micro enterprises and women who have no credit history or very weak credit history. Okay, so I prattled on about that. This is our Business Learning Institute for women. Some of the things that they learned I touched upon, right? Calculating the cost, unique selling proposition, finding grants, taxes, fund taxes, and how can you develop a social enterprise if you so choose. All right, so we crack on. We also deliver in-person services, particularly in Northern Ontario, because that's where we started. And we will send, well, prior to the pandemic, we will send business counselors up to Moose Factory, up to Moose Jaw. We do send them out to fly-in communities in Northern Ontario to be able to deliver services in person to women who normally would not have access to those services. And so far in our history, and we've supported over 22,000 companies that are women-owned and women-led. And just to kind of give you an idea of the numbers. And this is in 1 year, actually. So in 1 year, 2019, 2020. I don't have the pandemic numbers, but we helped more because more women-owned businesses were struggling because of the pandemic. Okay. All right. We have a keynote speaker, Chantal Hébert, who will be speaking at our annual event on November 18th. It is virtual. Men and women alike are encouraged and welcome. You'll have an opportunity to network. You'll have an opportunity to meet our partners. You'll have an opportunity to participate in 2 workshops and to do a cook along with with a chef whose last name I can't remember, but her name is Rhonda. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Now, this is funding and support for everybody across the board. The Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, Ryerson actually has a scholarship specifically to study photography if you wanted to do different courses in photography. Ontario Creates is an organization that supports the arts. Professional Photographers of Canada also has subsidies and other supports for photographers. Pass the Feather provides funding for Aboriginal photographers and artists. Woodland Cultural Center provides funding for Aboriginal artists and photographers. These Ontario Cultural Attractions Fund, where there's different projects that may include visual arts, of which photography is one. And then there's the Canadian Art Therapy Association, who also has different community partners, obviously throughout Canada, to do art therapy related stuff. I encourage you to poke around these websites. Calls for funding are fluid. They change a lot. Their criteria changes a lot. Sometimes you need to be incorporated. Sometimes you need to have a partnership with an NGO. Sometimes you need to have, it doesn't matter as long as you have a portfolio to demonstrate that you are serious about your craft. And the funding calls, especially if you're close to an election, are usually short and very different, right? If you're the closer you are to an election, whichever government is in power, they'll pump out more money. And sometimes the calls are only a week or 2 long before you have to submit whatever proposal you need to submit. And just be very mindful before wasting right, your time and all of these proposals. Read the criteria first to make sure you're eligible, and then make sure that your project doesn't tick 50% of the boxes and doesn't tick 80% of the boxes. It has to tick 100% of the boxes. Otherwise, it can be quite challenging to receive funding. Okay. So that's it. That's PARO, and we are everywhere. And I'm going to put my contact information specifically in the chat in order for people to reach out in case they need to leave. Now, if you do need to leave, I'll ask you before you go to also fill out the evaluation. Then I'll also put the link in the chat. And that helps me improve basically everything. And so I'm very grateful for your time. And I will open it up to questions. Tears, maybe even? No? Anybody?
Someone did have a question before. He asked about, can you share a standard sample of proposals? Is that something you can share?
I myself don't have any examples of proposals for photography. I'm a business counselor. I have 15 years of experience in business in different sectors.
Okay.
I'm afraid photography isn't my thing, but Peter might, I think, in your previous work. And if you Google how other people are doing it in your sector, or you just ask other photographers, they might also be able to give you some insights.
I think Braden had a question. Hand it up.
Yes. Also, thank you guys for hosting this event. I really appreciate it. So thanks for taking the time to do it. Really, my main question is kind of centered around social media. And just like, I am personally not on social media. And I think one thing I grapple with is like how much of a, like how much that's kind of setting me back in terms of being able to kind of create these network opportunities through things like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So I guess for me, it's like, I'm kind of wondering, is it possible to do this without having a social media presence in this day and age?
I speak as a non-photographer, okay? And I think as a non-photographer, it's still important to have a social media presence, even if it's not an extensive one. I know some people who work in tech who refuse to do anything with the social media, like Instagram or Imager or whatever. They don't trust the networks and the IT behind it, but they have LinkedIn profiles and they get jobs because of cold hits, because recruiters are looking at their experience and they just do the algorithm to check. Okay. I think if you're not comfortable with social media, then you need to have a stellar website, and you need to find a way to drive traffic through that to your website in order to maintain a higher rankings. All right. So the thing with social media is if you have 10, 15, 30, whatever thousand followers, Google picks up on that. Even if you're on the TikTok or any other ones, Google picks up on that, and you're automatically bumped higher because of your keyword search. So that's the trade-off.
Okay.
It's the trade-off of how much money you want to put into advertising to keep your rankings up, be it LinkedIn, be it whatever, or is it going to be like a generic Google search ranking things because you've developed 50,000 followers on Instagram, and that knowledge, that ranking then carries over to Google searches.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anybody else with any questions? Either you can type it in chat or raise your hand and we'll see you. Is that everything?
All right.
All right. If that's all, if there's no other questions. Marino, did you have a question or? No?
Okay, so I'll stop the recording now in case people are shy.